hiring process? You're speaking about commitment and sort of the co-founder, but in all your employees, I think that cascades through. How are you screening people to bring the right level of, sort of rigor to the job that you guys expect?
Yeah, I mean, it's something you can pay attention to when you're interviewing someone and you get some signals, but it's more or less you just ask them about their past experiences, right? Like, tell me about the project where you just invested the most time in your life in, and you see what they say. You can kind of get a sense for, the favorite projects that they've done in the past, like, how hard were they working, what sort of pace did they have, and then you can also get back channel references, right? So if that's something you're optimizing for, it doesn't really matter what you're optimizing for. You're only going to get so much from the interview, but you can kind of see examples of the past work. You can see examples of, like past relationships they've had, and then, ask them. So, yeah, I don't think it's like anything too different than interviewing for other things.
Do you do any active like counter sell?
For us, not really. I think by the time I think the final interview happens and like I'm talking to them and so on, I feel like we've already screened for all these things. Like, people have already opted in to being in office every day. People have opted in to being part of the culture we have, and that's great. And so my job is mostly to talk about the past experience, like see if it's a good fit for our team, see if their personality is a good fit, and so on.
Well, let's get into that sort of execution culture and how you've built that. How have you set up the team to sort of execute at the pace that you have?
Well, in the early days, it's easier because everyone's in one room and you know everyone. And you're just like talking all the time, right? If you're in the same office. I think nowadays we're really just trying to make sure that everyone has North Stars that are aligned in the same direction. And so if you're talking about sales or engineering, like, people have to know what they're working towards and like what the important goals are. And if they're not working towards one of the important goals, then it's probably not that important. And then it's very measurable, right? Like, for us, we are a SaaS company, like I'm sure many folks here, and the main thing you're measured on is ARR and how many customers you have and like what's the quality of those customers and so on. So these are very measurable metrics, and so that kind of becomes the North Star that everyone's marching towards. And we have ambitious goals, and so that kind of naturally drives some sort of intensity and ambition with the team. And then along the way, there's a lot of checkpoints, right? It's like if a customer gives us really good feedback, we treat that, it's like we celebrate the wins, we share that with the team. If a customer goes live, if we close a deal, if a customer renews for 2 years or whatever, right? Those are all wins, and we celebrate a lot of them. And so people across the team know that what they're working towards are these high-level goals. And yeah, I think that so far has driven the intensity and the execution. But again, we're still early. I think there's still a lot of things for us to figure out. And one of the things we are going to hopefully figure out is like, how do we keep this execution culture as we grow? Because right now we're about 100 people and we're growing quite quickly. And at some point it becomes harder to maintain the culture just by like saying stuff. And so you need to have systems in place and so on.
And what are you observing at those behavior, that sort of accountability culture, that cadence? How is that playing out in practice in what is sort of an unexpectedly like rapid turnover in software, right? Like, your market, as you mentioned at the top, like you researched it, you were sort of correct in identifying that customer support might be one of the first largest to be upended by AI. That has meant that people are sort of going into purchase decisions maybe out of schedule that they were originally planning to. Maybe they're having to do POCs or proof points differently. Like, what are you seeing in terms of the SaaS go-to-market that has maybe evolved in this sort of AI moment?
I think the biggest difference with AI agents is that you should be able to really test and see the ROI. And so in our case, right, it should be very clear. If you were deploying AI agents for someone, it should be saving money, first of all, because the AI agent should be able to resolve a good portion of their conversations, and that's a very quantifiable metric. The second one is customer satisfaction. Are customers actually happier interacting with this AI agent instead of waiting for a human? And if both of those are going up, then it's like a very, very easy business case for them. Because it's like, hey, we're saving a boatload of money and people are happier, which means we're going to generate more revenue in the future and people are going to be retained longer and so on. And then we kind of break down that math for them, and that's how you're able to kind of drive sales faster. And I would say that is a pretty necessary component of any AI solution nowadays, is because people have come to expect that, and because AI is just so easily like testable. People are expecting very hard ROI. So I think the two qualities of our space that have been very helpful for accelerating has been, number one, there's the ROI factor, right? It's really easy to measure what you're gaining from it. And then two, it's easy to deploy. Like, you don't have to do it all at once. If you kind of pick one surface area and deploy to 10% of the customer base, you can already start getting feedback, and like you can be live in production. And if that goes well, then you get ramped up, and it's very easy to justify, right? So it's easy to get started, and it's easy to measure. And that's how you get these buying cycles to be shorter, and it's kind of, as Sarah mentioned, to happen more frequently, because you're not waiting for like these big projects to take place, make sure everything's perfect, and like test it 1,000 times before they'll even entertain some sort of commercial discussion.
And then I think a source of conversation is just how quickly everything is changing and evolving and advancing. And so how have you structured yourselves to stay sort of at the tip of the spear of what is possible in the technology, and getting that as quickly into production, and sort of expanding the surface area of what Decagon can do for folks?
It's relatively easy, I would say, right now, because we're still a pretty agile team, and customer service is one of those industries where it's so large. Like, there's so much surface area for us to climb. But in terms of on the engineering side, I think we've always taken the approach that, like, hey, we should be building while planning for stuff to be changing underneath, right? So the models are changing, they're getting better, the new models are good at different things, and so you have to be able to evaluate them and figure out which models are good at what. There's new techniques coming out all the time as well that people are figuring out, and so you have to be building in a way that is conducive to that. And if a new model comes out, you should be able to like instantly evaluate it and then swap it in and out, and have minimal sort of leverage or lift there to get that done. So that's one big piece. And the other piece is when you're kind of thinking about building, we own the application layer, and so the application layer is kind of like the final product that the end customer is buying. And that helps a lot with this, because what we're tasked to do is we're just solving the business problem, right? And that's not going to change no matter how the technologies are changing. So as the technology evolves, the business problems still stay the same. And that's what's powerful about building the application, is because you're kind of being priced and you're kind of being evaluated by solving the business problem. And if the technology improves, then that should help you. It's not necessarily the case if you're more in the middle, right? If you're kind of an infrastructure thing, then maybe you have to think more about, okay, what happens if the models change? What happens if the applications change? So in general, we're trying to build in a very flexible way, such that as the technology improves, that should improve our product too.
And then maybe switching gears to sort of mind share and sort of breaking through the noise in this category. We've talked a little bit about sort of sales process, engineering culture around staying, at the edge on AI. How, from sort of a product marketing, positioning, getting the word out about Decagon, there's so much talk about different AI solutions and a lot of pressure tops down for folks to sort of have their AI narrative. How are you breaking through all that noise to be in consideration, to gain preference?
Yeah, I mean, I think at least right now we're a lot more well known than when we first started, of course, and so the sort of messages that we're generally pushing are, number one, Decagon is kind of unique in that we're Gen AI native, and we're kind of seen as the sort of more modern solution to a lot of this automation that's happened in the space, because our space has had a very long history of automation. And so the natural question for a lot of our buyers is, okay, well, how are you different, right? Like, those people are using Gen AI now too, right? So I think we've really pushed this concept of like, hey, we built from the ground up, and because of that, you're able to do so much more with Gen AI models. The whole paradigm that you build these agents is going to be different, and so that's been helpful. And then I think the other piece on the product marketing side is that like we have a sort of solution that actually works, right? That we have so many case studies now with big customers like Hertz or Chime or these customers that are seeing a lot of impact, and they've done case studies with us where, hey, we saved this much money, or we were able to repurpose this much of our support team, or we were able to drive higher NPS and higher retention and so on. And so when we do our product marketing, a big message is like, hey, AI is really hyped up right now. There's a lot of use cases, but this is one where there's actually real ROI, and you have businesses out there that are actually seeing fundamentally sort of powerful impact. And so that's what we emphasize when we do product marketing.
And then, with the trajectory you've had, how do you think about goal setting, raising the bar, keeping that ambition high? I think there's a healthy level of sort of dissatisfaction, despite I think that, some folks might be patting themselves on the back, and that is not at all the attitude on your team. And so how have you built that into the culture? How do you think about driving ambitious goals from here?
I think everyone on the team knows that we're still early. Like, the market is so large, we've only touched like a fraction of of it, and so there's still so much to do. And I don't think anyone feels like we've achieved the goal yet. So I don't think that's hard at our stage. I think the other part of it is just keeping people focused on like what could be, right? Like, we've gotten a lot of customers now. We have a lot of things figured out that we didn't have a year ago. But we still have so many things to figure out, because like the goal is the final goal is so far in the future, right? We want to be working with the biggest companies out there. We want to be kind of deployed across the entire surface areas. We want to be handling the entirety of the customer interactions, and so there's still always so much more to do.
Awesome. So we've touched on knowing your customer, building the team, creating a culture of execution. Any sort of other main messages you'd share for folks that sort of want to go on are on a similar journey in the audience?
No, I just think picking the market is very important. I assume most folks here are involved in SaaS, and I think the nice part about SaaS is that it is a very structured way to build a company, and that's helpful because you can measure revenue. You have like concrete customers that you can talk to, and so on, right? And I mentioned before, my last company was a consumer company, and the benefit of the consumer is you can grow a lot faster, but it's just like way less structure, way higher variance, and you don't have like single customers who are paying you a lot of money that you can talk to. So I think within SaaS, being able to find a market that's like a good market and has the properties that I've been talking about, I think it will just make everyone's life a lot easier. So yeah, that's the last thing I would say.